Thank you, Serena. Thank you, President Miriam. Thank you to you for joining us today, and happy Friday. Before diving into our event today, we first want to offer our deepest sympathy to all those affected by the coronavirus and extend an equal measure of gratitude to the many essential workers who have done so much to help us during this period of pandemic difficulties. We are also grateful for all of the extraordinary efforts by our Rotarians, as they have been working diligently to keep our club operating and engaging at full strength while working from home. I would like to introduce you to our Rotary Club of Melbourne. What is Rotary? A global network of 1.2 million volunteers, where people of action share ideas, join other leaders, and create lasting change. 35,000 clubs in 220 countries. In Australia, 30,000 members in 1,100 clubs. Most clubs have 30 to 40 members. What do we do globally? Promote peace, fight disease, provide clean water, sanitization, and hygiene, save mothers and children, support education, grow local economies. Rotary Club of Melbourne, first club in Australasia, chartered in the 21st April 1921, largest in Australia with 228 members, most famous president, Sir John Monash. We honor our history, embrace the future. 12 social groups, special interest group, 2 foundation. Our focus will be on to the future, turning the lens on the next 100 years. With our President, Miriam, opening doors for community service and projects, engaging meaningfully within our community, connecting Rotarians and friends through events and partnerships, inspiring and supporting tomorrow's Rotarians of action. Our values: service about self, meeting community needs, improving the life of others, friendship, working together on projects, develop with diverse people, diversity and inclusion, inherent within our membership and activities. These are some of the projects that our guest speaker, 𝒉𝒂𝒗𝒊𝒈𝒂𝒕𝒊𝒏𝒈 and 𝒍𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒕𝒊𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒏𝒈 will share with you. Serena, to you.
Thanks, Shanti. I'll just quickly pop that out for everyone. And just to let everyone know, so our first guest speaker for today is 𝒉𝒂𝒗𝒊𝒈𝒂𝒕𝒊𝒏𝒈. And Jim is a former executive of the coal mining industry and has extensive experience internationally as well as in Australia. And so I would like to invite Jim now to present and share with us his Rotary story and his retirement journey. Over to you, Jim.
Thank you, Serena. Let me just get this up here. So hopefully everyone can see that. Okay, so the sort of question for today's discussion is, how might Rotary help folks that are approaching retirement or have perhaps reached retirement to reach some of the goals that they're looking for in that phase of their life. So I'm sure I don't have all of the answers, but I'll share my journey over the last 3 or 4 years, and hopefully there's a few points there that might resonate with people listening here. So for the next 10 or 15 minutes, I'm going to talk about 3 things, a little bit about my working career to give people a bit of background of what I've done. Talk a little bit about my retirement journey or process here in the last 3 or 4 years, and then finish up with the Rotary projects that I've been involved in, and try and do that in a way that sort of weaves back into what it is I was trying to achieve, or think I've been trying to achieve since finishing full-time work, to sort of draw out that link between my personal sort of goals and what Rotary's been able to help me with. So without further ado, let's go back in time a bit. So my working career was sort of characterised by lots of travel and relocation. So I started off in Sydney, so that's a picture of Dee Why Beach, near where I was born. Moved to Melbourne, moved to Tasmania, moved back to Melbourne, went to the South Island of New Zealand. All of those sort of stints for about 4 years each. I then moved to the US. I was in Wyoming for a couple of years, and then spent about 10 years in Denver, Colorado, before coming back to Melbourne. So I was I moved to Melbourne actually 3 separate times. So I guess as I sort of reflect on my career, I was pretty lucky. I did lots of interesting things, worked with some good folks. Overwhelmingly, as I say, I regard myself as pretty lucky and reasonably successful. I think given where we are now with coronavirus, I also think I was pretty lucky that I was able to get a bunch of travel away as part of my working career. If I was sort of just retired now with an extensive travel bucket list to try and tick off, I guess I'd probably be worried about how I might succeed. But as I say, I managed to do a fair bit of that along the way. Some of my work colleagues might think that I didn't work hard enough and spent too much time travelling, but that's another story. In terms of the actual work I did, there's probably 2 separate phases. Early on, I worked in the aluminium industry. So that was on-site, so production-based. So if you're thinking production deadlines and safety and risk mitigation and response, if you're thinking sort of processes where something, things can go wrong, and quite often did, that's the sort of area I was working in. So lots of important things to respond to, and mostly, as I say, sort of on-site, working with sort of production teams. Later in my career, the second half of my career, and particularly when I moved to the United States, a bit of a change of pace. I was working in sales and marketing and logistics and government affairs. So in that sort of role, there's a lot of travel, visiting customers, visiting railways, visiting elected officials, meetings, trying to get people to agree to do things that they didn't want to do, and working in the coal industry. Most of the time they didn't want to do what I wanted them to do, so I'm not sure it was completely successful, but anyway, that's the way it was. If I reflect back, I was tried to be sort of, typical hard-working professional. I took most of my duties fairly seriously. Upon reflection, I guess I could probably, if I was honest, say there were times I took things, more serious than they needed to. Not everything was as super urgent as perhaps I considered it was. But having said that, most of the bosses I had thought what I was supposed to do was important, so I needed to keep them happy if I was going to put food on the table, which I guess was my primary task. So I did have family to look after. Fortunately, my wife and the mother of my 4 children was extremely efficient at all the things that she did, and had a full-time job as a school teacher along the way. So the kids at least had one able parent and one sort of part-time parent. When I put this slide together, must admit I was a little embarrassed that I couldn't find a single slide that had all 4 of them together. So I had to go with a bit of a montage here, and even then I have to throw in a few cousins as a bit of a sort of a bonus. But I guess if I was sort of to wrap all that up, my career was, as I say, I enjoyed it. I got no complaints. It probably wasn't super sort of outstanding relative to lots of other people. I was pretty busy, worked hard, or at least felt I did. Any spare time that I had, I felt that it, went to sort of family, to help the kids with homework, or kick the footy down the park, or give my wife a bit of a break. So I think I had sort of plausible deniability in saying that apart from sort of family and work, I really didn't do too much throughout my late 30s, 40s, into my 50s. As I say, I could sort of quite reasonably say I was just sort of too busy to engage in too much other than those sort of activities. So that gets me to change of pace and retirement. So I always intended to come back to Australia somewhere around 2016 or 17, which is what I did, sort of late 2016, came back to Australia. But having said it was a sort of a planned exercise, so there was no sort of spur of the moment decision or anything. Whilst it was planned, it clearly wasn't a very good plan, because once I came back, I quickly found that I was some of the things that I sort of intended to do or expected to do didn't quite pan out the way that that I expected. So, without saying that I plummeted into the depths of despair or anything, it didn't quite work out the way I thought it might have done. So I was more surprised, I suppose, than sort of anything else. I did intend to do some part-time work. I certainly didn't want to get another full-time job, but I thought I'd do some part-time work. I thought someone with my resume and work experience, all I'd have to do is send out a few emails and a few posts on LinkedIn, and I'd be knocking back work with a stick, and I'd be able to just pick the most interesting work. As I say, I was a little surprised it didn't quite work out that way. Maybe I shouldn't have been quite so surprised. I did get a few little things, and quite frankly, now 3 years after I sort of stopped working, I'm not all that sorry that I'm not working. I haven't really missed it all that much. I wanted to travel around Australia. As I sort of indicated, I've done a fair bit of travel internationally. I wanted to do more around Australia. And as I'll refer back to that in a minute, how some of my Rotary activities have helped me with that. And the last thing is I did want to sort of give back to society. That was a pretty sort of vague sort of goal on my behalf. But I was conscious that I really hadn't done too much. As I said, I was sort of regarded myself as fairly legitimately as being busy. One of the features of moving around as much as I have is that you don't tend to sort of integrate too much into, community. You don't join community groups because you sort of tell yourself fairly justifiably that you're going to be moving on in a couple of years, so it's really not sort of worth it. I think another point I'd like to make is that having spent 12 years in the United States, which I really enjoyed living there, it became obvious to me that whilst Americans can be pretty crazy and pretty eccentric, they also have a real theme in society of philanthropy and charity and giving back to society. So I met plenty of people who had a sort of a clear driver in mind that if they were lucky and successful in life, that it was appropriate for them to give back to others that hadn't been quite so lucky or quite so successful. So on the one hand, I observed that and I thought that was a great thing. I didn't actually act upon it when I was in the United States, but I did sort of bring it back with me to Australia, and it was something that I wanted to do. Let me just talk a little bit here about some of my experiences with retirement. Hopefully, others may plan out their retirement more successfully and won't experience some of these things. But as I say, it was a bit of a struggle for me for a year or a year and a half. Things like loss of structure. You go from being really busy each day, having arrive at work at 7 o'clock and a slate of meetings and deadlines you've got to meet and a full travel itinerary going out for several months of things you've got to do and presentations you've got to prepare for, to suddenly sort of go cold turkey and have none of that. You do find yourself just kicking around saying, what am I going to do? And any thoughts that I had that my wife might need my assistance in optimising household activities, it quickly became apparent to me that the house was well optimised and any role I thought I might play there was in fact not needed. So in fact, I was instructed to leave the house on a regular basis and to stop getting under her feet. Another thing that I guess just that I reflect upon is that I think individuals and society tend to sort of, we tend to identify with what we do. So you're a school teacher, like my wife, or you're a policeman, or you're a senior vice president of some crazy thing with a corporation. That's sort of how you introduce yourself to a society. It's how you think yourself in society. So when you stop being one of those things and you have no title anymore, and particularly when you're still relatively young and you look as though you should be doing something, I'm not sure whether society looks at you as sort of askance, or whether you sort of start to sort of look at yourself and say you should be doing something more, and just saying I'm looking for something or I'm in between activities, I found a little bit sort of less than satisfactory, shall we say. Okay, so that gets us on to joining Rotary. So I had no involvement in Rotary before 2017, basically. I'd never been a member. Nobody in my family had been a member. If I've ever known people that were a member of Rotary, it didn't sort of make any impact on me. So it was really just a chance conversation with someone that said, if you're bored, I must have been complaining at lunch somewhere. I said, well, go and join Rotary. So I did. And I quickly found that there was plenty to do. And that helped me, because I had excess sort of energy. I had been instructed to get out of the house, so I had to do something. And clearly, as Shanti has indicated, you know, a core part of what Rotary does is right in that sort of sweet spot of, you know, philanthropy and sort of helping society. So the first project I was involved with was, or major project, I guess, was ending trachoma. So trachoma is an infectious eye disease that causes blindness. It's only in the developed world, the only country it still exists is Australia, and in Australia it only exists in remote Indigenous communities. So that's a real sort of something that we should be embarrassed about, and it's an obvious project for an organisation like Rotary to say, look, we can do something to fix that. So that was a project that I joined or was conscripted onto. So I want to talk about a couple of things here. One is that the End Trachoma project really fits into a sort of a rich vein of major health initiatives that Rotary takes on for itself. So it's got a sort of great track record. And if we went back in time, we'd see that Rotary's been involved in ending polio for perhaps a couple of decades. You might have heard just recently on the news that polio has been eliminated in Africa, which is a great outcome. Now, clearly, that's not all Rotary's doing. There's plenty of other organisations that have been working hard and long on ending polio, but Rotary has been at an international level an engaged and consistent player as part of that team. So trachoma fits into that vein. And if you look forward, what we're doing, one of the projects we're going to do for our centenary here in Australasia is, together with clubs in New Zealand, Australia and New Zealand are going to seek to eliminate some diseases in a number of Pacific Island nations that can be eliminated by improved vaccination procedures. So you can see the trachoma project fits into that sort of health initiative very well. So great project and well worth doing. From a personal point of view, however, I'd just like to make the point that I personally was able to get to Alice Springs and to the APY lands, which are in north-west South Australia there, as indicated on the little map. And they're places I probably wouldn't have gone to as a sort of private citizen. And if I had have gone there, it would have simply been as a tourist. And going there as someone with a role to play, albeit a small and peripheral role, it really doesn't sort of compare in any sort of meaningful way with people that are full-time engaged in this stuff. But nonetheless, as a player, you get to meet a different set of people. You get to see how the community works. You get to meet so the Aboriginal groups. You get to meet health workers that are working in there. You can ask questions about, you know, how things are and what needs to be done. The sort of things you just never do as a sort of grey nomad just wandering through, buying a meat pie and a beer at the local shop. So quite frankly, I probably got more out of this project than the people that were supposed to be the beneficiaries. Moving on to what I'm working on now in terms of sort of larger projects. I'm on a team that's looking at bushfire relief, particularly in Victoria. So this is sort of a Victorian-based project. The sort of nuts and bolts of it are refurbishing some donated caravans. So a number of caravans, you can see in the picture there, were donated by a member of our club. They needed to be sort of fixed up and registered and provided to people, given to people who had lost their accommodation in the bushfires, who were sleeping in cars or tents or sheds or something like that. I think from a sort of a broader Rotary perspective, one of the learnings that sort of I appreciated from this project is as Ksantthi pointed out in her introduction, being a sort of a club-based activity with groups right across Australia. You know, we were able to, as the sort of Melbourne-based clubs, do the sort of fundraising and organise the, you know, the mechanical sort of work that needed to be done on the caravans, whereas the folks who were based in the local communities, they were easily able to identify the folks who were doing it tough, needed accommodation, and were able to sort of streamline the, you know, as I say, the identification of them, and maybe do away with a few of the layers of bureaucracy that some of the larger groups sort of struggle with, you know, that try to do similar work. So this has been a great project to deliver some sort of meaningful contribution. Another thing that's worth reflecting on, you know, when I think about this project, is that Rotary, being a club with an organisation with over 100 years, and exactly 100 years in the case of the Rotary Club of Melbourne, it has a sort of a corporate or institutional memory. So bushfires obviously aren't new in Australia, and Rotary's involvement in bushfire relief is not new. And when we moved into this current phase, we're able to look back and talk to some of the folks who were involved in, you know, prior sort of campaigns. And one thing that they flagged as an area of, if you like, improvement upon reflection of what happened in the past, is to put a greater emphasis on mental health. I mean, it's obviously important to look after the physical needs of people that have lost everything, but this particular project, as I think it rolls forward, will start to sort of transition more into providing mental health for people that have just starting to sort of resurface after a sort of enormous trauma and loss, and make sure that we provide the mental health assistance so that they, on their journey to, you know, rehabilitation, I guess. So I guess I'm trying to pick out a couple of themes there that's not just the work, but some of the sort of value I think that an organisation like Rotary sort of provides. Moving here to a couple of the more sort of day-to-day type activities, or routine activities more than day-to-day. So this is the Around the Bay bike ride that the Rotary Club of Melbourne has been supporting for about 15 years. So the bike ride itself is 1 day per year. This picture here is actually a picture of my wife. I thought initially it was her ordering me out of the house, but on closer inspection, I can see that it's her down in Williamstown ordering bike riders to follow the correct path. So if you think there's a common theme with giving orders, that's the school teacher coming out. So just focusing on why we are involved in Around the Bay. Rotary clubs, initially Melbourne, and it's now 4 or 5 other clubs, provide over half the volunteers for the event. So the bike ride itself probably wouldn't go ahead without our support, but we really do it because it's a major fundraising event for the Smith Family's Learning for Life program. So that program is providing educational assistance to kids from disadvantaged families, and quite clearly it's trying to break that sort of poverty cycle right at the start. Rotary clubs, including our club, have some, you know, really fantastic programs in homelessness. They're not ones that I'm involved in, but, you know, this particular one, you know, dovetails really well into that sort of homelessness, preventing future homelessness, if that makes sense. Okay, moving through here quickly. Both Deb and I volunteer for Second Bite, which is an organisation that's not part of Rotary, and there's a lesson in its own right there. But Second Bite is a pretty simple and pretty important goal of trying to redirect sort of food that would have been wasted to people who are going hungry. And I think the key point here I wanted to flag, in and above just doing the work, is that Rotary, I think, doesn't have that sort of pride of ownership that perhaps some organisations do. It's quite happy to simply assist other organisations going about their important work. So from a Rotary point of view, from what I do, I simply give up a couple of hours on a Sunday afternoon about every 5 or 6 weeks to collect food at Paran Market, as the picture shows, we sort of sort it out pretty quickly and put it in the back of the second bite truck, and away it goes. So it's a very simple activity. We are simply really providing volunteer labour for another charity. So I think that there's a good point there that I wanted to emphasise. What Rotary does, it has a great track record of working with others in a collaborative way. Second to last slide. The final thing, I guess, that I do is I work at the DIK warehouse. So this is a sort of Rotary run and managed operation. It's basically collecting surplus goods in Australia, storing them and shipping them off to typically undeveloped countries overseas. The sort of goods that we focus on mostly are medical equipment, so hospital beds and some more sophisticated equipment, schools, desks and chairs and books, and then clothing. So that's the majority of it. There's some stats there of some of the value that we've been able to basically take away from rubbish dumps in Australia and reallocate it to use in other countries. Typically we load about a container a week, so about 50 containers of goods a week are loaded and sent overseas, and that's been running for sort of 10 or 15 years. So basically that's it from me. That shows my journey through working through retirement to joining Rotary and the things I've done. It's obviously a personal journey for me. Hopefully you will be able to, or anyone who's listening here is contemplating retirement or just has actually got into retirement, will have a better prepared plan than I will. But nonetheless, I think Rotary is a great organisation, and it provides a lot of outlet for sort of your energy and your capabilities and your skills that you can feel are going to waste if you just sort of stop working and are hanging around at home. So that's it from me. I better stop sharing.
Thank you, Jim, for being open about some of your challenges in transitioning from full-time work to retirement, and also for sharing how your involvement in Rotary Melbourne has helped you to stay in the game. Now, if you have questions for Jim, please type them in the chat box and we will make sure to get to them during Q&A. I would now like to introduce our second speaker to you, Deborah Yin Foo. Deborah has more than 30 years of experience in the IP and biotech space and is a very new retiree. Welcome, Deborah.
Thanks, Serena. I'll just do the sharing thing. Okay, we're up and running. Hard act to follow, Jim. It makes me want to join up for Rotary all over again. It's very impressive, and you've helped me a lot in giving a bit of background to a lot of the projects that I'm also involved in. So I won't go over those again. But thanks again for this opportunity to talk to you and provide you with a bit of an insight as to my next stage of my journey, which is retirement. Now, I'm pretty pleased to get here, and this has been a planned retirement, and I had planned that I would retire when I hit 60. So I did give it a fair bit of thought prior to this. But, this COVID situation has really come in from left field. And whilst it's been an inconvenience, it hasn't really derailed my plans for retirement, nor has it derailed any of my plans that I'd put in place. Now, I've thought about retirement for a long while, and it is a complete change of life, as Jim said. There are things that you need to get your head around, because you're not working. But the thing is, I have no deadlines, and I like that. They're only self-imposed deadlines, but it is a time when you can start to think about the things that you want to do, and not what someone else tells you what to do. So, it really is a time to think about the things that you enjoy doing. It's not a stepping stone to a new career, and it may be for some people as well who start off again and work again. But it is a time of choice. And if you start to think about, what you want to do, give back to community, Rotary is a great place to start. Now, one of the most common questions that I've been asked is, what are your plans in retirement? So, oh, how come this isn't? How come? Oh, how do I move? This isn't working. Hang on.
Deborah, press escape.
Yeah.
And
it's not working.
Can you go back into your PowerPoint, Deborah?
Yeah, look, I might just try this. Damn. Right.
sorry, everyone, technical problem.
Sorry, you know, it was working before.
It was.
Okay.
Yes.
You know, you think you got yourself all planned and it's all working, but let's try that. There we go. So, so I put up this this cartoon. Now, Dilbert asked this guy if he has a plan for retirement, and look, it's not a great plan, but the thing is, he's got a plan, and a lot of people don't have a plan. They go into retirement. Sorry, Jim, but you know. Sometimes it's good to have something in your mind that you'll go into when you do retire. Of course, like many retirees, my plan was to travel. And again, Jim, you mentioned that anyone retiring at the moment, travel is not one of your options. A little bit disappointing, but you know, I just wanted to, you know, travel for pleasure and not for work, and do something different that I was not doing when I was working, and at least use some of the skills that I gained during work to put that to good use for others. I'm not an expert in matters of retirement. In fact, this is the second month of my retirement, and it's unusual because it's in isolation. So I haven't been out there to see what it's like in the real world to be a retiree. So I've no experience, and I haven't really been able to roll out my plans, but I have been given this some thought for a long time, and I have planned my retirement. Now, Jim and I have been asked to give our commentary on our road to retirement, and of course, Jim's experiences and my experiences are different, as will your experiences be quite different. Now, I retired on the 30th of June 2020, this year, after a long career as a patent attorney, staying in the same firm for 31 years. Now, I started looking at retirement about 14 years ago, and that's when I joined the Rotary Club of Melbourne. As you can see, I'm a bit of a planner. I like to know what's coming up next. So, you know, what is a patent attorney? Well, a patent attorney is one of those things that when you meet someone at a party and you tell them that you're a patent attorney, they generally back away, smile politely, and don't make any eye contact because it's not a well-known career. But it is a career in the legal profession, and it's a terribly stressful career because everything is about deadlines. Now, in a nutshell, I protected people's inventions. So I would write up documents to describe their invention. We would argue with the Patent Office to get good protection for that invention. They would go and commercialise it. Someone would go and infringe them, and we would go and go to court to try and defend their patent. Did work in other areas of intellectual property, including trademarks and designs, copyright. So, but my area was in patents, in biotechnology patents, medical patents. And so I dealt with a lot of universities, large pharmaceutical companies, large biotech companies, both in Australia and overseas, startups, local clients, financial people like venture capital people. But this was a life in a bubble. It was a life in a very privileged bubble. There was plenty of money around. We lived a life that was, I don't know, I guess probably, well, very protected and somewhat extravagant. And we were protected from reality, so to speak. So why did I join the Rotary Club of Melbourne? Well, I joined in 2006. I wasn't thinking of joining Rotary. In fact, I didn't know much about Rotary at the time. But it was a stage where I really started to think that I needed to get out more. As I said, I was living in a bubble, and all the people around me were living in a bubble. That same bubble. And we all needed a bit of a dose of reality, including myself. I was looking to be inspired by new people doing different things. Now, I was at this firm for 31 years, seeing the same people, doing the same sort of thing. And it really, got to me. I really needed to be inspired by new people. And I began to think that I wanted to be involved in a more diverse group of people that had diverse experiences, and I could finally give something back to the community that I wasn't doing before. Now, like I said, I knew nothing about Rotary, but I knew that it had a good reputation for doing good things. I was introduced to Rotary by the then incoming president, Chris Wong, and Chris spoke passionately about his experiences with Rotary, including many of the projects, the diverse membership, and the fellowship that the club offered. The projects were interesting and involved many areas of the community that I had little or no experience with, including disease prevention at the community level, clean water, sanitation in isolated communities, maternal and child health and health issues in general, and education to underprivileged groups. And these were the areas that I felt were interesting to me. Now, there's a whole bunch of other projects out there. Now, fortunately, Jim's given you a bit of an insight in the background on a lot of these projects that I've become interested in, and I'll talk about those later. But I thought it also would be a great distraction to my work at the time to experience a new involvement with the community, and of course to meet a whole bunch of other people who are much more community minded than me and my colleagues who are living in this bubble. Now, the timing was no coincidence. Work was somewhat one-dimensional, and I did start to think about what I might do in retirement. Well, that was 14 years ago. I did think about getting involved with an organisation such as Rotary at an early stage, which would enable me to feel comfortable with the club and its members and get involved in a low level because I was still working. And when I was ready, I could ramp it up. Now, that time is now in retirement. And so what I had in my plan was to bed down one aspect of my retirement that I was pretty comfortable with, so that when it came to retirement, it was pretty seamless. So I was already part of the club, already knew what I wanted to do or the people in the club. So it was pretty good. I had some people to fall back on. I do have some other vague ideas that I want to do, probably get involved with some of my ex-clients and maintain my interests in the area of biotechnology and science. I was actively involved with the biotechnology industry in Melbourne, so I will keep my foot in the door for that as well. One of the tricks about retirement is that you don't want to be as busy as you were when you were working. It's something that you have to realise that you are retired from work. So what sort of activities do I do in Rotary? Well, my involvement with Rotary started very slowly, and I was still working and I had 14 years to go. So my early contributions to Rotary were those that I could easily slot in with my work and my day-to-day activities. So in the beginning, I worked with reception, which required welcoming members to the weekly meetings. We have, when we're out of this COVID situation, we have these great meetings every Wednesday where we have a presenter with really interesting topics. You get to meet all the other members of Rotary. In reception, you check them off and you get to meet them one by one. I was also the group captain at Central 2 group, and that was essentially arranging social functions with those people in Rotary who were in your general area. So that was a pretty easy thing, just finding some social functions to do. And Second Bite, Jim talked about Second Bite. Have been doing Second Bite since it started, and it only requires a couple of hours every 6 weeks to collect the food from the Paran market and the Victoria market as well. So they were fun things to do, and as you can see, we had a bit of fun with the fruit and vegetables that we picked up at the time. Now that I'm in retirement, I can sink my teeth into some things that are a bit more meaty. I've joined the End Hepatitis Now project, and this involves educating other Rotary clubs in this general district about the treatments for hepatitis B and hepatitis C, both of which can be treated. So the more we are aware of these treatments for hepatitis B and C, the more chance we have of saving a few more people. Now, we do this with Hepatitis Victoria, or Hep Vic, and our role is to introduce the speakers, and Martin, who's in the purple background, Martin gives a short talk about these treatments for Hep B and Hep C. I'm also the chair of the Membership Engagement Committee, and it's exactly what it is. We ensure that the members are engaged with some of the activities at Rotary, and to make sure that you as members get what you want out of Rotary. And finally, I was a volunteer for Around the Bay. Again, a lot of fun, although not getting up at 5 o'clock in the morning and getting to St Kilda in the dark. But anyway, the light did come through, and it was a lot of fun. And at the end, you really do get a sense of achievement of helping people. So what are the benefits of joining Rotary for me? Well, I think the benefits are pretty obvious. But for me, the main thing was fellowship. Meeting and working with a bunch of people who are like-minded and wanted to give something back to the community. They all make a difference by simply being part of the club. The other benefits, which were probably less obvious, were stepping out of my comfort zone just a little and doing things that I never thought I would do. There's less pressure, because let's not forget, this is a voluntary thing, and you can select the things that you want to do, and you have more control over that. Also, opens up your mind to issues that you would not otherwise have been exposed to, such as mental health, homelessness, community diseases such as hepatitis and trachoma. The weekly meetings have fantastic speakers, and through Rotary, we've been able to access them. In fact, next week we've got Brett Sutton talking. That type of engagement is less likely through more likely through an organisation like Rotary. So there are many experienced people at your fingertips in Rotary, and their knowledge and their experience is something that you can tap into as a member of the Rotary Club. So I hope I've given you some thoughts as to how Rotary can be part of your retirement plan. It'll also get a lot of those people off your back asking you what you're going to do in retirement. And your answer to them will be, you want to make a difference. So thank you. That's all I've got to say.
Thank you, Deborah, for giving us a glimpse of what it's like to retire in COVID times. I think what's particularly interesting for me listening to you and Jim was the contrast between the planned and unplanned part of retirement. And what struck me particularly was what you said about living in a protected and privileged bubble, and how Rotary offers a way to get out more and give back to community. So now it's time for the Q&A. Let's have a look and see if there's any questions from the chat box for Jim and Deborah to respond to. So far we've seen comments from people saying they've enjoyed listening to you share your journeys, both Jim and Deborah. And great example of the benefits of forward planning to transition for Deb. Let's see. Thank you, Jim, for sharing your excellent achievements, excellent presentation. And Deb says she can relate to a lot of what you've both said because she joined in May. She plans to retire in 8 years, had 6 months of work, and really relate to Jim's comments around how you introduce yourself. So question from Marion, what has been a highlight moment in the club for you, both Deb and Jim? Maybe Deborah first.
Highlight. You know, I think with the Rotary Club of Melbourne, the members come from a whole diverse range of careers, I guess. And, you know, highlights are opening your mind up to things that you would not, you know, have experience with. You know, these community projects. You know, a lot of the projects that's trachoma, you know, are completely unaware of that. So highlights of that, being exposed to those sorts of things and thinking about something outside of your bubble.
Thanks, Deb. How about you, Jim?
I guess a highlight of perhaps having joined Rotary for me. So I walked the 𝒂𝒂𝒊𝒕𝒊𝒏𝒈 Trail in end of 2017, I guess. So I was chatting to the folks there about the Porter people, the Papuans. I sort of said, well, you know, what happens if you get sick out here? You know, like you have to walk to get out. It's a pretty remote area. And the guy said, oh, no, if you're really sick, we can call a helicopter. I said, how do you call from here? There's no phone service or anything. How do you make contact? And he said, oh, each village has a special emergency phone. And we just happened to be walking through a village. And he said, oh, there's one that's over there. They were all put in by the Rotary clubs in Australia. So I thought that was great. I was able to say to him, well, look, you know, I'm a member of Rotary. So, you know, it was a sort of clear example of you can be in the middle of New Guinea and yet there is examples of where, you know, the impact of Rotary is present, you know, on a sort of ongoing basis.
Thanks, Jim. We have a comment also, I think, with Marie, who resonates with what you said, Jim, about how you introduce yourself in retirement when you don't have the title that you used to have. I think that would be a real challenge for, at least initially.
Well, it's probably a reflection on the sort of, you know, my shallowness that I only thought of myself in terms of what I, you know, the business card, what was on my business card. But nonetheless, I think it's probably something that a lot of people have, is that, you know, you put a lot of effort in your career, and when you can't identify to that anymore, you do wonder what it is you are.
That's true. So another question that's come up is, what would you recommend as a first step to meet other members in Rotary? Deb, do you want to go with that first?
Well, I would have thought talk to other Rotary members. I mean, you know, obviously I'm happy to put myself out there and talk about my experiences to anyone wanting to join Rotary. You know, I probably speak for Jim as well, but, you know, both of us would be happy to talk to anyone, but, you know, talk to other Rotary members. Doesn't have to be in this club. You know, you'll even see them at the local sausage sizzle when we get out, you know. I mean, I've spoken to other Rotary members. You know, we're all part of a club. I mean, as soon as you say that you're part of Rotary, you're very welcomed everywhere. So, yeah, just grab anyone from Rotary and have a chat with them.
Fantastic. Did you want to add anything to that, Jim?
No, I'd say it's a very open organisation. It is a community organisation. It's a sort of basic part of the club is, and all of the clubs, that they welcome new members. They're looking for new members. So no, I've found no difficulty engaging with anybody.
Great. We've got another one here. This one is a bit juicy. What is the thing that you both fear most in retirement?
You know, losing relevancy, I guess. You know, as we've said, you know, you do lose some identity. You know, I'm no longer, well, I'm still, you know, I'm no longer a patent attorney working for a firm. But, you know, I've got experience behind me, and, you know, I'm just moving on to the next phase of life. I am a retiree who was a patent attorney. I guess, you know, when you respond to these things, you just got to look at who your audience is. I mean, do they really care? Do they care that you're a patent attorney? So, you know, but, you know, you want to be relevant. You want to be useful. You want to maintain some sort of usefulness. Mm. And I think Rotary allows you to do that, even at a very low level.
Yes, that's great. So would you say then, as a related other question, that you've missed anything from your work life so far? I know it's only been a couple of months.
Have I missed? Oh, look, I'm in isolation. I haven't seen people. So, you know, at the moment, yes, I probably have missed seeing people face to face.
Yes.
And you get a lot of that at Rotary. I mean, you know, once a week at least at the weekly lunchtime meetings, you will see a whole bunch of people. So, you know, even in your retirement, when we get out of this, every week you will see people. And this can, you know, this can go on for the rest of your life. You know that every Wednesday there will be a whole bunch of people you'll be able to see. So the thing I miss is probably speaking to someone face to face.
Yes, and I think you'll not be the only one. I love that you said when and not if. That's really
it's got to be when.
That's right. And Katie here says she works full time and she still misses people. I think we all need that human connection, don't we? We thrive on that. And we don't know how much we miss it till it's actually taken away.
Yes.
Is there anything you wanted to add, Jim, to these? Anything that you are missing from your work life?
You know, you do get pretty sort of close to the folks that you work with. You know, you share the sort of upside, you know, the good times and the bad times. But having said that, I've moved quite frequently. So, you know, you have a bunch of good work colleagues, and then you find another bunch of good work colleagues. So, you know, when you sort of join an organisation like Rotary, it's just another new bunch of good folks to get to know.
Fantastic. So for someone here who is maybe thinking about whether Rotary is a good fit for them at this stage of their career, what would you recommend that they do next?
Oh, have a chat with us.
Okay. Have a chat with you both. Fantastic.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, certainly the Rotary Club of Melbourne, I think, has in recent times put in some good initiatives to, you know, help people join the club. Has got like mentor programs that are designed to, you know, particularly for a large club like Melbourne, to make it easier for new people to navigate their way through, to, you know, be introduced to the folks that are in charge of different areas. So you're not trying to, you know, work that out for yourself. So I think, as I say, the Rotary Club of Melbourne's put a lot of effort into that. I think it's easier now than it was. I mean, not that it was hard, but it's been made easier. So yeah, and there's no expectation. You come along to a bunch of meetings, meet some people, and if you want to do something else for your life, that's fine. No one's going to hunt you down.
Thank you so much, Deb and Jim. Really appreciate it. I'll hand you back now to Shanti, now that we have covered all the questions so far. Thanks, Shanti.
Thank you, Serena. And thank you, Deborah. And thank you, Jim. And thank you, our President, Miriam, for joining us today. Thank you to you and our Rotarians for communicating and exciting interaction with our Q&A. If you are interested in finding out more about us, please feel free to call or drop us an email anytime. With your permission, we will follow up with you by phone in the next few days to find out your feedback. I would like to finish today's presentation by sharing you a quote. Never waste the opportunity offered by a good crisis. Rotary is a platform for anyone that wants to contribute back to society. If you have any spare time at all from your family, from your career, and any activities in Rotary Club of Melbourne that sparkle your heart. We are here for you. I hope today's stories inspire you to join Rotary Club of Melbourne. We look forward to see you again. Thank you everyone and have a lovely weekend.